Welcome back. News flow is all geopolitics and, really big shifts which are underway in terms of which way the direction the U.S. is taking. Marko Papic is with us, Chief Strategist at BCA Research. Marko, good morning. Great to have you with us here. And I think it's our first chat of 2026, so wishing you the best for 26. Great to have you. Prashant here.
Thank you, Prashant. Same to you. Happy New Year to everybody in India, and good morning.
Good morning. There's so much to tackle, but broadly, let me not start with the broad point. Let me start with the specific point. This, the capture of these two ships, Russian-controlled ships from last night, which we learn about this morning, Marko. Do you think it's going to really settle down at that? Or, this is going to blow up and show up in significant ways going forward? What's your sense?
My sense is that it's going to settle down. Okay. President Trump is not looking to rebuild Venezuela. He's not looking to invade it. And Venezuelans are not looking to be constantly bombed. So I think that there's going to be an agreement between the two. And what we did here today, aside from the news flow you were mentioning, we also did hear that the PDVSA and Energy Ministry in Venezuela are having discussions with the Americans. It appears that Americans are going to want effectively a payment of certain amount of oil. Sounds a little medieval, but that's why I think that we will have things settle down in Venezuela. Now, that's in Venezuela. Whether they will settle down everywhere else, I'm not sure about that.
Marko, my question actually was in Venezuela, of course. I think they're not looking to invade, etc. That's fine. But the question is, these are Russian-flagged ships in that sense, right? So my question was, U.S. and most of the crude went to China, for example, out of Venezuela. We don't know if that oil flow will continue, some 600,000 barrels per day. And of course, now this thing with Russia as well. So my question was with regards to China and Russia.
Yeah, they'll be fine. First of all, Russia has no capabilities with which to do anything about this. Their one aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov, can barely power itself. So they have no power projection capabilities this far. And in China's case, China's fine buying oil somewhere else. But you point out a different issue, much more relevant, I think, to investors beyond the next couple of weeks. And that is the United States of America just took away a president of another country. And President Trump was very honest about the reason why. He wasn't mincing his words. He said it's because of the oil. We want the oil. We must have the oil. He said it multiple times. And so why is that important? It's important because if you're a sovereign nation anywhere around the world, the United States of America has just told you that it no longer considers commodities as something that's globally traded. Rather, it's something that's hoarded. So that's what I think is really the big picture, the takeaway from Venezuela. It's that we're in this new age of empires world where commodities and natural resources are no longer something that's out there on the open market and you just buy it at the price that it requires. You have to actually secure it at the source. And that's not something that we've really had since 50s and 60s.
All right. Hi, Marko. Good to see you, Ben. What happens next, though? Trump goes after Cuba, goes after Iran. China makes its way towards Taiwan. What do you make of it?
So I don't think China will make its way towards Taiwan for a number of different reasons. I think they're perfectly fine waiting. I think the Cuba one is probably, yes, America probably goes towards Cuba. I'm not sure that really matters to most of your viewers, investors, honestly, anywhere. It's not about Indian investors. I don't think American investors will care about that either. The one that I worry about is Iran. And I think that, President Trump's regime change gambit in Venezuela was extraordinarily successful to a point where, not a single American service member died in this operation. Maduro was extracted with his wife. It's as clinical as it gets. It might be the greatest special forces operation in history. It would require a superhuman level of self-control not to try it again. Imagine yourself in your own life when you do something extremely successfully. I think you want to try it again. And so we know from some of the comments that President Trump has been making, even before the attack on Venezuela, he was saying that the Iranian regime should be very careful in repressing the protests that are going on right now because the U.S. might intervene. That was even before the Venezuela situation. So I worry that the instinct of many investors is to think that oil prices should come down, that basically we just unleashed all this supply. My view is the exact opposite. I think that we could have a significant geopolitical risk in the Middle East. And unlike in 2025, when President Trump was very careful to indicate that he was not threatening the regime in Iran. I mean, he said multiple times, this isn't about regime change. This time, it clearly will be about regime change. And so Iran's reaction function will be significantly different than it was, last year.
All right. Marko, what our viewers would like to know is where is crude headed from here? You're clearly not in the camp that's buying that theory that Venezuela sends more higher amount of output and that puts a lid or that leads to a decline in crude oil prices. You believe the risk is actually on Iran and what Iran can do to the oil market. So given that sort of uncertainty, where is crude oil prices headed from here? In the past, we've talked about, I think your view is that oil prices spike up. Where is it headed?
Well, I think depends what your time horizon is, but I would be surprised if oil prices are below $70 by the end of this year. And I'm talking Brent, not WTI. And first of all, that's not that big of an appreciation. If you think about it, it's like 15%. That's all right. The reason I say this is because I'm extremely worried, not just about Iran. I'm also worried about OPEC reaction function as well. Saudi Arabia has kept the lid on prices, and I think partly it's done that for market share reasons. I think it's also done that to curry favor with President Trump. Great. But Saudi Arabia has very ambitious and aggressive industrialization priorities. We all know about their Vision 2030. It's a serious endeavor. It wants to industrialize the country. It wants to move it away from energy. The problem is that it currently has a current account deficit, which is very strange for a commodity producer and exporter. It has a current account deficit it has to finance through effectively much larger bond issuance than I think is healthy, and also currency reserves. So I think that even if you ask me that question, even without Venezuela, if you asked me that question on December 30th, I would have given you the same answer. I think the prices have to go higher. I don't think OPEC can continue to pump oil at current levels. I think Saudi Arabia has to start thinking about its own domestic fiscal priorities.
Just one thing, Marko, right? I mean, you said that Russia cannot project power like that, and nothing will happen. I mean, if directionally, right? I mean, doesn't that mean that actually, if anything, with these unilateral actions from the US, not right or wrong, I'm not saying it, but pragmatically, I mean, everyone basically falls into line. I mean, if the US can do this, who wants to be the next Maduro, right? So, isn't that the way to look at it? I mean, I'm not saying right or wrong, but I'm just saying that instead of increasing geopolitical risk, doesn't it lead to maybe increased defense spending? Sure, everyone will want to spend more and bolster the defenses, but overall, it's counterintuitive, but shouldn't it lead to reduced geopolitical risk?
I mean, you're not completely wrong. And first of all, I don't deal with moral, normative rights or wrong either. I'm bathed in aloof indifference. I work for investors, so we're speaking the same language. You may very well be right. I think the question is U.S. taking up too much of its resources in Venezuela or Cuba or Iran? And the answer is no. Even in 2025, President Trump's intervention in the Israel-Iran saga lasted how long? A couple of hours.
Yeah.
So these are surgical strikes that allow the United States to retain its ability to intervene elsewhere. Of course, again, one of the things that, as I said earlier, it's a temptation to keep doing this. And eventually it may not work out as well. I mean, remember 2003, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan. It was extremely successful, incredibly successful. In many ways, I think that the intention to invade Iraq was bolstered by the success of Afghanistan. It was so smooth, such a well-done operation that the U.S. said, well, this stuff is a breeze. Let's do Iraq. And then, 20 years later, the U.S. sucked up incredible amount of resources. I would argue they ushered in our multipolar world because of that intervention. So, yes, you're correct. I agree with you, but it will require a considerable amount of prudence by President Trump not to overdo it.
Marko, I have more questions, and I think so many implications, right? We'll invite you for another longer program, and I hope you come on, and we can take up some of these points more individually as well, and do a deeper discussion. But thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.